Moeketsi, you in for the cup afterwards. Good stuff. So just to introduce, my name is Jerry Werter. I'm a tax consultant by nature, but for some reason I thought that I should talk about globalization, resourcing, strategic skills growth through import, export, and exchange of skills. So this is pretty much, if you want to bring a foreigner into South Africa or send a South African abroad, or get rid of one, what you should be doing. And I think just to introduce first Mpume, Monyela, on my far left, on your far right. She's a Human Resource Director at Philafrica Foods Company, which is 100% owned by the Africa Group. She's responsible for the global people and cultural strategy and the total human resource value chain across all territories where Philafrica exists, so that means pretty much all over Africa. And in between us, as far as HR directors go, she's pretty much as good as they get, as far as I'm concerned. There we've got next to her is Ngwenya. She's a Deputy Director, Department of Labour. She's responsible for international cross-border labour migrations between the Department of Labour since 2005. So it's her job to ensure that we protect South Africans' jobs. And obviously job creation is a big issue in South Africa, as you very well know. And what I also know about her is in a previous life she used to be a teacher. And I like teachers. They are good people. And then next to her is Phindiwe, Mbhele, Director, Corporate Accounts, Department of Home Affairs. He's responsible for stakeholder relationships, management between the department and corporate entities, corporate employers and institutions, visa, residency matters and so forth. He is really the guy that if we need to bring a foreigner into South Africa, he's on top of the pile. He's the most important guy that must make sure this must happen in a correct way. And then last but not least, Moeketsi, Seboko. He's the Immigration and Technical Manager at Xpatweb. He advises on immigration and technical aspects for mostly large corporates, multinationals, specializing in about expats. As far as work permit experts goes, Moeketsi is, in my view, the best. So without further ado, Mpume, you've been, have you got a mic? Where are the mics? Where are the mics? There you go. You've been an expat yourself, right?
Yes.
Please tell us about that.
I worked for the Foods Company some years ago. It was Martin operated. And I was an expatriate in Central Europe, in Austria. And don't get it wrong, it was not Vienna, so nothing to do with Mozart. It was a little dorp called Bruck in Innsbruck, which is about 500 miles from Vienna. And I was there as an expatriate for about 2 years. Okay. That was quite exciting times.
And if you reflect now back on your career, was that a good thing to be expat outside South Africa?
Well, besides the fact that it really was not easy, Jerry, I think it was really great. But the great thing is that when you come back to SA, you really become like hot cakes.
Yes.
Because everybody really wants to tap onto the knowledge and the skills that you would have acquired. But I do think that having spent the time there, first of all, has enlightened me as a person.
Yes.
But I think over and above that, you really just get to be involved in all sorts of different dynamics. So it certainly is of great value.
Okay, and then in terms of currently your business, I mean, you run a more large multinational Africa workforce. What are your thoughts around global migration of staff?
So, as Jerry has mentioned, our company is 100% owned by the Africa Group, so I'm falling somewhere in between agriculture and foods, because Philafrica Foods is actually the foods division of Africa. And by the way, Philafrica, Phil itself means love, which is a Greek word, so it's the love for Africa. That's what the base is in terms of our organization. And the mere fact that we are operating in such different streams and different categories in terms of food, does require us obviously to have a very different outlook into the way that the global mobility works. So within my organization, not only are we just looking at tapping into the skills within South Africa, but we really are bringing in a lot of skills globally, and not only within the continent, but across the globe. And I guess I can share a little bit more about that later.
Good. Phindiwe, so she's a client of yours, right? Are there two mics or just one? So just check if there's not an extra one. So, there you go. Yeah. That's good.
Yes, no, thanks, Jerry. Yeah, no, she is the type of person that we would interact with as the Department of Home Affairs, because we also have an interest with or about South Africans that also do work abroad, because now we talk about attracting people who are critically skilled, but we are also alive to the fact that we also have South Africans that are abroad that we would like to really have them here bringing the skill that they would have gathered in their many adventures abroad, to bring into their country so that we could tap into that and benefit from whatever that they would have learned while they were abroad.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean, from your perspective, we obviously know that investment in South Africa is a key strategic objective at the moment. And I guess with the capital must come resources. So you must be a very busy department at the moment or going forward.
Yes, we definitely are. I'm sure you would be aware that I think it was last year that Mercedes-Benz SA announced that they had won a global contract for the new C-Class.
Yes.
And with that came, the need for them to overhaul their production line. And obviously it meant that they need to bring people who were qualified in the new technology that will enable them to be able, to build the new C-Class. So you can imagine that apart from that being, more than a billion rand investment, there were also resources in terms of human resources, people who go all over the world building these production lines coming into South Africa. But then also, you would know as well that where Mercedes-Benz is placed is in the Eastern Cape, in one of the provinces that have the highest unemployment rate. So you can imagine when we have a company like that operating in such a place, how much benefit it really gives to the communities around the place where they have set up their shop.
Very good point.
Yeah.
So, Nonhlanhla, your job to protect South African jobs.
Yes.
That's good. We hear you well. That's perfect.
Yes, my job is to protect South African jobs. We are saying if there is an opportunity in the company, the charity begins at home. The employer needs to test the local labor market first before we employ someone from outside. Even if it's the investor comes to invest in South Africa, they need to ensure that they employ more South Africans than foreign nationals. So we are saying we are not xenophobic. It's just we are saying that local is legal. But if we don't have the skill that the employer is looking for, we are not a stumbling block as the Department of Labor. We allow the company to bring the people from outside to come in with this skill.
And I mean, obviously, if you bring foreigners in theory, there's supposed to be skills transfer to local South Africans. Do you think that is really happening, that skills transfer process?
The skill transfer is not happening at all.
Is it not happening at all?
Yes, it's not happening at all. But now there is a new act that was promulgated in 2014, Employment Services Act. So we are going to ensure that we monitor. We are going to develop the guidelines. The companies will be trained on how to do the skills transfer, so that we ensure that if they employ someone from outside, the South African is upskilled.
Yes.
Instead of applying for the same position all over and over again. So we need to ensure that these locals are upskilled.
But that has been promulgated, but it's not in effect yet. Can you share a bit more around that? That's not confidential?
Okay. It was promulgated in 2014. We were still waiting for the regulations to be adopted.
Okay.
Luckily, they were adopted. They were presented to our minister last week, and they were approved. We are going to do the consultation 1 minute, then we need to just wait for that. We are going to do the consultation.
So consultation, can IPM members participate in that? Will you let us know when that's going to
Yes,
happen? Good.
definitely we'll let them know, because we need to ensure that the skill is transferred and they can get it. We are also, maybe while we are
Yes.
the new things that are on the pipeline, we've also developed a new, we call it draft, on the National Labour Migration Policy, whereby it's still a zero draft, it's still on the pipeline. Once it is adopted and everything is fine, then the consultation, the members will be informed.
Thank you. Phindiwe, do you agree that there's not enough skills transfer? I mean, I'm not trying to trick you into it, but what is your sense? Do you tend to agree with over there?
Yeah, look, I agree with Labour that maybe there may not be adequate skill transfer, and our observation is that it is a question of how. You know, we've always said that from a Home Affairs point of view, we find that the reason why it is difficult to transfer skill is that we do not have a method that has been put in place. For instance, you find that a company would employ somebody as a CEO.
Yes.
Now the question would be, how does a CEO transfer the skill of a CEO to a South African? Whereas it will be much more easier, for instance, for somebody in a technical occupation.
Except if that CEO is Marcus Joost, you don't want him to transfer those skills, right?
Exactly. So it's companies, the feedback that we receive from companies is that we really do want to transfer skills,
Yeah.
but we find that it is difficult because the departments have not, or the departments do not prescribe as to how should we do that. So companies find their own creative ways
Yes.
of transferring skills. Yeah.
So, if I can get back to you, and I mean, this is the I guess the tension, and sometimes it's a good tension. We hear about we have to protect local jobs. We hear about it takes time to find locals to do the jobs. There must be a skills transfer plan. But you sit with a global company investing in South Africa that says we can't care less about those things. If you want our investment, I need you to bring X, Y, Z into South Africa yesterday. Is that a real pressure that you face, or?
Jerry, it is. It really is. And I think maybe just to speak a little bit about the transfer of skills, because I think it just
Yes, that's a
links
question
it
of
quite
course.
nicely.
Yeah.
I do think I would agree with Nonhlanhla, but half-heartedly,
Yes.
right? And really based on the fact that there is skills transfer that is currently taking place.
Just a little bit further.
Is that better?
That's much better.
So half-heartedly, in that there is skills transfer already taking place.
Yeah.
And in all different scenarios, not only just for your inbound expatriates, even from the people that are going on retirement and what have you. I think the challenge that corporate faces is that within that process or within those programs, they are not formalized.
Yes.
So it is happening on the ground, because if you've got a succession planning, you're going to have to make sure that the skills transfer takes place.
Yes.
But it's the formalization of those programs, which I think we are really battling with.
No, I think it's a mic thing. It's not a your thing.
All right, so that's the first thing, just about skills transfer happening, but not formalized, and perhaps less of the program structure that's actually happening.
Sorry, we're gonna run one mic here, guys. Yeah, I think let's try that one again. That one is cutting out the whole time.
I'll switch off this one.
Maybe switch that one.
Okay.
And then we talk about the need that we have.
No, it's not better. Just use that one. Throw that other one away.
By the way, my voice is actually quite, it's loud enough for everybody to hear me.
Yeah.
So we talk about the pressures that we are facing as business then, in terms of how do you balance the fact between your inbound expatriates and the local skill.
Yes.
Fact of the matter is, as a country, we've got to be committed to transformation. That you can't do much about. But I think for me, it's more about how do you strike the balance of being able to bring the expatriate skills, but making sure that in the period that they are here, you are able to utilize them fully. And in the interim of utilizing them fully, how do you make sure then that you actually do transfer those skills. It's got to be intentional.
Yes.
It's got to be, I've brought you into this country for a particular reason, and these are the things that are labeled that you would do. And what the companies are doing, I mean, when I was an expatriate, there was a very clear distinct in terms of what I had to do and what I had to deliver on.
Yes.
The good thing about it is that companies that has got the rand are actually better positioned because they can start incentivizing the results that you're getting. The issue that they face is that in instances where an expatriate will come on board and then Cupid strikes and these guys don't want to go anywhere, how do you make sure that you're actually able to then make sure that there's an evolution in terms of that?
I think that's very correct. So, Moeketsi, if you don't get the permit, I mean, you often at the coal face of this, where permits get received or not received. How difficult is it really?
In most cases it is, but again it depends. I have a most difficult job of trying to balance the client's expectation and compliance with our regulations. My job is to ensure that whoever the company has identified as a skill or a resource that they need, that firstly that person will qualify for a visa, and ensure that the process that needs to be followed is followed until the visa is issued.
Where does it go wrong?
Most companies tend to think that they, as much as they understand the legislation, implementation and the process to get a visa, they think that it's as easy as it is on paper. And you tend to realize that once you start the process to navigate through the bottlenecks between either the Department of Labor or the Department of Home Affairs is the struggle. And companies will come to you at a later stage to say that now they're in a crisis, the application has been rejected. Can you assist us?
So you get a hospital pass?
Yes. And once you assess then the case, from the beginning, then that's when you identify mistakes. The person could have been issued with a visa, the person does qualify, but then it's the process that was followed that had flaws.
Okay. So you think a lot of failed applications because it wasn't done correctly up front?
In the main, yes. Predominantly, as I've mentioned when I started, that yes, the process can be there in black and white, but then understanding how it works, because we're dealing with human beings here. Home Affairs officials or Department of Labor officials are human beings just like you, and there are different interpretations, different processes.
What about personnel of foreign embassies? Are they also human beings?
Who's sitting next to me? I don't have to.
No, he's Home Affairs, he's not there.
So we are facing challenges. It's not a secret. We have experienced that whether either Home Affairs officials or their officials, they tend to create Home Affairs of their own. Yes. They tend to interpret the legislation as they see fit. They tend to request additional documents as they see fit. I think some of them, if not most, they frustrate the process.
You go meet them?
Yes. It's very important to me. I will be going to China and India next month, just to understand and to engage them, to understand the processes and what exactly they want, and in a way to enable clients or corporates to comply with what their specific requirements are.
Okay. So, Phindiwe, do you agree? Do you think there is a gap with DIRCO, or your view is that really the exception to the rule?
Yeah, from Home Affairs side, I would say that
which is a completely different department, right?
Yeah, you remember what the situation is that we have, if I'm not mistaken, around 154 missions abroad. Okay. 154 missions abroad, which is a number of home bodies who would view and interpret the legislation in the way that they see fit. Now, what happens is that we have missions where you find a person that has been posted by the Department of Home Affairs, but you will find in another mission an official that is posted by the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. And honestly speaking, the training of the officials would not be the same, because from Home Affairs you will get somebody who might have been, been processing visas from the time that they've been here. But somebody from DERCO will be somebody that is more of an international relations person and so forth. So even the training that they will get might be in theory, but not necessarily practical. So you do get those, inconsistencies in terms of the application of the law. But our work as the officials here within the country is that whenever we pick up such inconsistencies, or maybe people like Moeketsi, then they will tell us that, the same application pack that I submitted in Washington, same requirements and everything, when I submitted in Egypt, it was rejected.
Yes.
That is when then we are able to pick up that maybe there's a particular ambition that we need to address, and try to assist maybe with better training and also the interpretation of the law, as you said.
So, and obviously, if a corporate brings foreigners into South Africa, you heading up that department, at what stage would you like to meet with the corporate and understand their needs and their plans and how you can support them? What is your views around that?
Thanks, Jerry. The advice that we always give is that come to us in the beginning. I mean, we have.
Are you serious? You would like to meet the guy up front?
We meet corporates that come to us while they are still at the planning stage.
Okay.
To say, in 2020, this is what we are going to do. We are going to need 200 people. This is what they are going to do. What do you advise? What is the view of Home Affairs on this?
Yes.
And we are able to engage with them. In fact, that is what is required from us, because the section that I'm heading, one of our core mandates is to facilitate the attraction and retention. In fact, I've heard of some people saying that when foreigners come into the country, after a particular time, they have to leave. But we are saying that if a person is critically skilled and we see that they are contributing to the economy, it is actually in our best interest not only to attract that person, but also to retain them in the country by any means necessary, as long as we know that this person is going to be contributing positively to the economy. So,
very wise.
Yeah, when companies approach us early, it is always in the beginning, as Moeketsi say, if everything is done properly in the beginning, it always works out fine in the end.
Sorry, that's hugely insightful, and thanks for sharing that. So, and you don't think enough corporates are doing that at the moment, do you? Or is your experience that generally they do approach you up front?
Thanks. My experience has been that corporates will always approach us when things.
The purpose hit the fan.
Yes. I wanted to say
say
that.
But English is not your first
Yeah.
Others are
So they would usually come to us when something really bad has happened and they are unable to bring in their executive, or there are certain delays that are likely also to delay the project.
Okay.
Then they come to us in a state of panic.
Yes.
And we always say that you should have come to us earlier in the beginning, but nevertheless we are still able to assist in such situations, because also you find that some companies will find themselves into the hands of the unscrupulous agents, because just like in any market, there will always be people who say, no, we are the experts in this, we can do this.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the end they only find out that they've been sold, they've been taken for a ride.
It's called self-created urgency.
Exactly. So the earlier they start approaching us, approaching the department, or approaching a reputable company as well that can assist with immigration matters, it is always in their benefit to make sure that their project does not hit a wall.
And if I can now put you a bit on the spot here, right? What are the industries where we just don't have enough South Africans to grow? But firstly, if you can't tell us, just say, Jerry, sorry, that's confidential. But I think as HR people, we would like to know where from the Department of Labour do you roughly know their shortages?
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Especially on the sector, on the agricultural sector,
Are you serious?
is we've got challenges there.
Farm
where-
workers.
Farm workers. We've got a problem whereby our local, they are not interested to work there. So it becomes a challenge for the country to get South Africans to go there and work in farms. We decline those opportunities. But the other opportunities,
Recording this,
we don't have any challenges. On other opportunities, no. We don't have.
Farm workers, and that's the big one.
Yeah, it's the big one.
Construction, okay.
No, construction is okay.
I don't think we've got a construction industry in South Africa anymore, actually. Do we have a construction industry left in South Africa or not? What is Basel in a big share price at the moment? Yes.
We are about to finish the Eskom project.
Okay. And I hope we never do that again. Yes.
Unless maybe there is another contract, there's another project that is on the pipeline that we need the GPS to come and construct.
Thank you, please.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah.
You know, you're talking about construction. We are actually having there's deep sea exploration that's happening off the coast of Mozambique.
Yes.
A lot of international oil companies are now exploring for gas.
Yes.
And chances are, if any of the companies is able to strike and find gas there, there's actually going to be an oil and gas industry that is going to become. So that is where most of the work now silently is happening. The blue economy.
Okay, so that's where we should all upskill on our Portuguese.
Yeah, if you look at the skills,
Yeah.
I'll just give an example. If you look at the skills of exploration, you have people that do what they call hyperbaric welding, people who weld underwater. Now,
That's very difficult. Yeah.
yes. Now, if you were to find, a company is able to find gas, I'm telling you that the Department of Labor would find it difficult to find a South African that can weld underwater. Because remember, the skill will always come from an industry that is existing.
Yes.
So the majority of these people will obviously be people that come from abroad.
Yes.
I mean, you even have cases where you wouldn't understand that in the ocean economy they would want a chef, but it would not be your ordinary chef. It should be a chef that is able to operate on a ship. Somebody that is acclimatized to the environment, the ocean environment. So it is not, if such a person was to apply, would say, what is a chef, anybody can cook. But now can that person cook in that environment that,
I sympathize with that. My wife can't even cook in my own home. So Mpume, I mean, from your perspective, I mean, you're one of the few companies in South Africa. So many companies are retrenching, and you are absolutely the opposite. I mean, you are buzzing, you are growing at one massive speed. Would you bring more foreigners in if you had the chance, or would you? Where does the solution lie? How do you support your CEO in his business expansion strategy?
Well, besides the fact that I lose count as to how many companies we actually buy in the space of 4 months.
Yes.
Because, we've just, in the last 2 months, we've basically bought 3 companies on board. Some of you may be quite familiar with a company called Packworks, which is the manufacturer of the knickknacks and the peanut and raisin, which I thought I would bring to the car, and let everybody have this. But, all the industry, where we are actually just within, and not only, as I said, I'm fully within agriculture, but foods as well.
Yes.
So if I look at the number of companies that we are buying at any given time, the likelihood of us bringing in non-South African skills is larger than most companies would do.
Yes.
However, for me, what is important, and I'm glad that we're touching base in terms of the type of skills that we see as critical and what really is needed. So yes, we may be needing, and I think South Africa has got some of these skills. So if we're looking for nutritionists, we're looking for engineers, we're looking for project managers, we're looking for quality management type of skills. We do have those skills in SA. The differentiator though is the depth and the scope of how much do you have. So if you want a project manager, of course I can get a project manager. But how many projects have they actually run? how much capex did they have?
Yes.
And to what extent do they actually understand both the local as well as the global landscape?
Yes.
So I think, you know, when we are looking out for this, it's almost like moving in a trend that it's less to do with the competence for that particular skill. It's
Yes.
more the depth, the scope, the exposure. And interestingly, we talk in HR about we don't want to be looking at people that does, you know, hopping of jobs.
Yes.
Actually, we are looking for people that are hopping within jobs.
Okay.
Because that gives you the exposure, different markets, different companies, different methodologies, different models and what have you. So there's quite a huge shift in terms of what we are looking at when we are getting these skills on board.
Yes.
But to answer the questions, are we going to be on the outline for global mobility? Certainly, within the continent and across the globe.
Thank you so much. Moeketsi, so hand over the mic that works. So, I mean, you mentioned to me there's a survey that you're running about the shortages, or not?
Yes, we actually distributed or sent a survey last year to most HR that had companies, and then we got the results, and you know, I can proudly mention that our survey was even mentioned by Minister Ngwenya. You know, that gives an idea of the type of skill ones that corporate requires, the challenges in obtaining and acquiring that skill as well, and the different types of skills that they need. We are currently running a survey for 2018, and then we will invite, or rather we'll distribute the survey to companies. If anyone has not received anything from Xpatweb with regards to the survey, they can contact us. What basically we require from companies is just to you know, complete the survey and maybe give an indication of the type of skill that they predominantly need, and if there are any challenges in obtaining that skill, what those challenges are. That skill then is then shared with the Department of Home Affairs, and then it might, chances are, it will inform the revision of the critical skills list that the department is busy with. Yeah.
You should check it. Good. Thank you, Moeketsi. Any final thoughts from your side?
I think what I would like to put across to HR executive is the importance of engaging people like us when they want to bring in skills, because we know how things work. We can help them with assessing, we can help them with ensuring that they get that person. If a person doesn't qualify, we'll tell them upfront that there's no way that this person will get a visa. Rather, you know, look locally to see if you can find a South African for this position. Yes.
Or make a plan.
Or make a plan.
If it's legit.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Phindiwe, from your side, what would your message be to HR execs out there? I mean, this is your forum.
Yeah. No, thanks, you know, from our side, we always start from the basis that we are not experts in everything. So if we, for instance, if we want to give out visas for certain skills, the only people that can tell us which skills they are finding it difficult to, even certain occupations to fill, are people who are in HR. So, just for instance, to give an example, the Department of Higher Education and Training last year gazetted a list of what is called the occupations in high demand list, the OIHT list.
Yes.
Now, usually that is followed by a list that comes from the Department of Home Affairs. It's called the critical skills list. We've drafted the list, but what we'll be doing is that before we gazette our list, we need to have public consultations, and it would really assist us a lot if we were to get input from the HR directors and executives to say, in fact, you are saying that this is a skill that is critical, but we can tell you actually now in the market which occupations we are unable to fill, so that also, we make it easier for them to be able to facilitate those skills for foreign nationals, because it means that if they put the advert in the newspaper and they are unable to find a South African it is what we call a diligent search. They've tested the market, they are sure that this skill is not available.
Yeah.
So we as the department should then be able to facilitate for them to be able to get that foreign national who possesses the skill from wherever country they are able to find them.
That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor? Department of Labour, what does Trump say? Put America first, put South Africa first. Yeah.
The advice from the Department of Labour is that the companies, before they apply, as Mbhele was saying, we need to do the diligent search by advertising the position, and they need to ensure that when they advertise the position, they avoid like this issue of foreign languages. They put the conditions that are difficult for the locals to respond on those adverts. So they need to ensure that also the salary that they are going to offer the foreign national is a salary that is market related. And also they need to ensure that the qualification of that person that they are going to bring in the country, the person is qualified, and if it's a foreign qualification, it must be evaluated by the someone.
Thank you for sharing that. Thanks for attending. Mpume, you've got a tough road ahead in your company on the big expansion. The rest of the world is retrenching, by the way, you know, so tell us a bit about your challenges.
Pass them through.
Yeah.
Well, I'm quite excited that now I've made friends in higher places. That's the Department of Home Affairs, Department of Labour. I think that for me is absolutely crucial. But Jerry, my last thought is that I really would just like us to open our hearts and our minds in understanding that the skills shortage is actually a global challenge. You know, it's not only for South Africa. So whilst we are sitting here and really going through this whole challenge of how do we bring the great skills to do the skills transfer and what have you, we must also think about how do we take our people outside South Africa.
Yes.
Because we really do have some great skills in this country that can be utilized in other countries. So there certainly is an outlook of saying, whilst we do inbound, let's also do outbound. That's the first one. What it does say to me as well is that as people in the HR fraternity, it's important that we understand our role in this whole landscape.
Yeah.
And I think today's HR executives, HR directors, and HR officers, we have a huge responsibility to make sure that first we understand the landscape, but secondly, we understand what role we should actually be playing around this. So at the moment, we are all digging into this whole skills inbound and outbound, but I mean, we all know that in the next 10 to 15 years, we need to now worry about the whole AI revolution. You know, what is going to happen when the likes of Sophia, hits our board?
Yes.
What's going to happen when we have to now start not only worrying about who do we get globally to actually come into our space, but how are we going to deal with these humanoid robots to be able to actually do the transfer of skills, to be able to maintain and to optimize and stuff like that. So I do think that in the HR fraternity, we've got a very huge responsibility in our hands.
I agree. Yes.
I forget to mention one important on the diligent search agent. At the Department of Labour, just want to encourage HR Samuel, but we've got a database. We call it Employment Service of South Africa.
Yeah.
Currently, we are sitting at about 4.2 million unemployed work seekers registered. That if they've got any opportunities, they need to contact the Department of Labour. We are there to assist them. It's free.
Thank you. Good. Guys, from my side, girls, must be careful these days. Thank you so much. I'm privileged to have hosted you. I think this is an absolutely top-notch informative session. Thank you for attending and participating so well. And I'm personally very positive about South Africa's future if these are the answers. Thank you.